Hey everybody, Tim Albrecht here, and thank you for listening to the YFP podcast, where each week we strive to inspire and encourage you on your path towards achieving financial freedom. This week we're talking love and money, how to successfully navigate your finances with a significant other, spouse, or partner. Easier said than done, right? During the show, I discuss how to identify with your money personality and how this does or does not match with your partner, strategies for setting and achieving goals together, 25 financial questions and discussions that every couple should have. Hang with me as I'll give you a resource and a link to download those questions, and advice from the YFP community on what has and has not worked for them in their own journey navigating this important topic with their partner. Now, before we jump into this week's episode, I have a hard truth for you to hear. Making a six-figure income is not a financial plan. Yes, you've worked hard to get where you are today. Yes, you're earning a good income, but have you ever wondered, am I on track to retire? How do I prioritize and fund all of these competing financial goals that I have? How do I plan financially for big upcoming life events and changes, such as moving, having a baby, changing jobs, getting married, or retiring? And perhaps, why am I not as far along financially at this point in my career as I thought I would be? Well, maybe the answer is that your six-figure income is not a financial plan. As a pharmacist, you have an incredible tool in your toolbox. That's your salary. But without a vision and a plan, that good income will only go so far. That's why we started Your Financial Pharmacist, where at YFP, we support pharmacists at every stage of their careers to take control of their finances, reach their financial goals, and build wealth through comprehensive fee-only financial planning and tax planning. Our team of certified financial planners works with pharmacists all across the United States and helps our clients set their future selves up for success while living a rich life today. If you're ready to see how YFP can support you on your financial journey, you can learn more by visiting yourfinancialpharmacist.com/learn. Again, that's yourfinancialpharmacist.com/learn. All right, let's hear from today's sponsor, First Horizon, and then we'll jump into the show. Does saving 20% for a down payment on a home feel like an uphill battle? It's no secret that pharmacists have a lot of competing financial priorities, including high student loan debt, meaning that saving 20% for a down payment on a home may take years. For several years now, we've been partnering with First Horizon, who offers a professional home loan option, aka a doctor or pharmacist loan, that requires a 3% down payment for a single family home or townhome for first-time homebuyers, has no PMI, and offers a 30-year fixed rate mortgage on home loans up to $766,550 in most areas. The pharmacist home loan is available in all states except Alaska and Hawaii, and can be used to purchase condos as well. However, rates may be higher and a condo review has to be completed. To check out the requirements for First Horizon's pharmacist home loan and to start the pre-approval process, visit yourfinancialpharmacist.com/home-loan. Again, that's yourfinancialpharmacist.com/home-loan. Hi there, Tim Albrecht here, flying solo this week as we talk love and money, how to successfully navigate your finances with a partner. Now, first things first, this is a heavy topic, right? And I do not have all the answers. When it comes to our financial plan for Jess and I, we have found the system, keyword system, that works best for us, but we are far from perfect. We've made our fair share of mistakes. We haven't always been on the same page, and it certainly has required compromise and grace on both sides. So this is not a preach and teach episode. That would be very helpful. Rather, the intent is to give you some things to think about and conversation starters to find the system that works best for you, because at the end of the day, that's going to be what matters most. Now, before we jump into some of the tactical strategies and some of the questions and conversation starters, I think it's really important that we spend time to reflect on and identify our money personality and how this does or perhaps does not match with our partner. Right? For some of you that have been at this topic for a while, you know how emotional and how behavioral this whole topic of managing money can be. And so it's important we spend time to reflect on and to get curious about, what is our money approach? What is our money personality? What is our money classroom that we grew up in, the household that we grew up in financially? And how does that perhaps shape how we manage our money today, and ultimately how we merge two of those money personalities together as we try to work and get on the same page. So, some questions to think about here as it relates to the money personality. Do you approach money in the same manner that you were raised? Have you reflected upon the money classroom that you grew up in and maybe what worked and didn't work? Was money in your household an open conversation? Was it a closed conversation? Was it stressful? Was it calm? What was the emotional tone surrounding money? Was there transparency around money, or was it a taboo topic? What were the spending habits? What was said, and what were some of the unsaid lessons that you learned along the way? And how did all of this potentially contribute to the money personality and the habits that you employ today that you ultimately bring into your relationship, right? Good and bad. Probably true for all of us. If you want some guidance on this, there's a great resource. We'll link to it in the show notes. The Money Couple has 5 different money personalities. They have a book and an assessment if you want to really dig in and go further on this topic. And they, in that resource, they reference 5 money personalities. Those 5 personalities are: number 1, the security seeker. Number 2 is the saver. Number 3 is the spender. Number 4 is the risk taker. And number 5 is the flyer. Now, anytime we do these assessments, right, we're running a risk a little bit in terms of bucketing ourselves into one of these approaches when often we may have a little bit of more than one of these. And that's one of the things I like about this tool is they combine 2 of these, what they call a primary and a secondary, to come up with your money profile. So, for example, let's say that you identify as a saver / security seeker. Okay, so just some quick definitions here. A saver, pretty much their outlook is that as they share in their own resources, a penny saved is a penny earned. You make things happen by getting the best deal, right? You can often be someone that's very thrifty. Characteristics of a saver would be someone who's trustworthy, organized with money. They also would have some real challenges, potentially, including maybe obsessing over money, having a hard time letting go. And they would rarely spend compulsively. They really like the plan, and they really like that good deal. Now, a security seeker, which here was the secondary personality, they have an outlook that better safe than sorry, right? Protection and security is the definition here. So these individuals make things happen by planning for the future, and they're often very well prepared. So some defining characteristics here would be they can investigate things thoroughly, do a lot of research. Challenges, of course, could be, some of the potential, and again, letting go, and maybe finding that balance that we often talk about on the show of living the rich life along the way. Certainly also trustworthy with their finances. They want to make decisions by confirming that there's a plan, right? So they're not going to be very spontaneous in their spending, and they like to have multiple options. This is just one example, one assessment, but it's really helpful, again, that we get curious, that we reflect upon what is the approach that we have surrounding money. How might that have been influenced by the money classroom that we grew up in? And the more we can understand that about ourselves as well as our partner, and how we bring those characteristics into the relationship, can be really helpful as we then set a plan going forward. So once we really think about some of those money personalities, I think it's then that we want to really figure out how can we set and achieve goals together. Now, we're going to get into a little bit about, perhaps is it everything is merged when it comes to the finances? Might we have some things separate, some things merged, completely separate? Of course, that's an individual decision for everyone. But ultimately, on some level, we want to have a shared vision, even if some of those items might be separate. And I think it's so important. I've talked about this on the show before, that we start with the vision and not necessarily start with the budget or the spending plan, right? Not start in the weeds, but really start on what is the dream that we have financially? What does success look like for us collectively as a unit? And can we agree upon that vision, that direction, that dream that we have for us financially, right? That's a much, I don't want to say easy, but easier conversation than getting into the individual decisions. This is also the place where we really want to get all of those goals, all of those ideas out of our heads onto paper. We want to see what overlaps, what doesn't overlap. Obviously, there's going to be some compromise here along the way. But once we get them to be shifting from unsaid to said, right? So Jess can share her goals, I can share my goals. We can see what is similar, what's different, and then we can begin to start to compromise and prioritize those. That's really where we can start to then begin to implement and execute on that vision. So for us, I've shared this before on the show. Typically, what we do is once a year, we're looking at, hey, what does success look like for us over the next 12 months, right? Keeping the bigger vision in mind. What does success look like over the next 12 months? And what are those things that we want to focus on spending? So we're looking at, hey, are we on track with savings goals for the future and retirement planning? If not, what are some things that we want to surplus in the following year? What do some of the experiences look like for us in terms of vacations, home projects, things like that? What are the giving goals for the year, right? These are the things that we need to begin to, again, get out of our heads onto paper so we can start to set a plan. Now, I think it's really helpful here, especially if you have two individuals that are on completely different pages, that this is really, really where a third party can be very helpful. I know for Jess and I, our financial planner at YFP has been really helpful in getting us to have conversations, not only together when we're in the room with the financial planner, but also in between those meetings to make sure that this is an open conversation as we can possibly have. Now, I have some questions here that I think are good conversation starters, right? I started the episode by saying this is not about telling you what you should do. This is really about helping to start conversations, stimulate some discussion so that you can figure out what the system is that works best for you. So I've organized these questions into different areas, and I have 25 of them. I'm just going to mention them briefly. And we have a one-page resource that you can download for free that will have a list of these questions. You can go to yourfinancialpharmacist.com/25. Again, yourfinancialpharmacist.com/25. Okay, so in the spirit of starting conversations, here are 25 financial discussions that I think worth having. And let's start with the first bucket, which is setting goals, budgeting, and just the overall approach to managing the finances. So the first question is, have we discussed and agreed upon our short-term, midterm, and long-term financial goals? Now, you can define these differently. I think of short-term goals as within the next 12 months, next year, midterm, 1 to 3 years, and long-term, greater than 3 years. Obviously, you can determine the timeline that makes the most sense of you. And then furthermore, how can we best set, review, and update these on a regular basis? So there's that initial exercise. And then how often are we going to be reviewing these so that we can make sure we are able to implement those in the plan? Sounds simple, right? But everything starts with the vision and getting to some level of an agreement on the shared goals. Second question here is, have we developed and agreed upon monthly spending plan, budget, whatever you want to call it, that accounts for all of the income and all of the expenses? And does this spending plan, budget, again, whatever you want to call it, does it represent and include the goals that we just worked through in the first question? Now, again, for some individuals, and I'll share some data here in a little bit from our community, for some individuals, everything is merged. Some they have some separate, some merged, some's completely separate. So obviously you have to work through this as it relates to how you treat the merging or lack thereof of the accounts. But do we have representation within our spending plan approach, whatever that looks like? Lots of different ways to do that, so that the goals, there's an actual plan to implement and achieve those goals. Question number 3, does one of us take more of the lead than the other when it comes to managing the finances? And if so, are both of us aware of our overall situation? How do we ultimately make sure that both parties are aware of the progress if one person is taking the lead? I have seen that often, not always, often is the case where one person may take the lead. So if that's the case, what's the plan? What's the strategy? What's the structure so that both parties are aware of what's going on and the overall progress, right? The overall situation. Number 4, I've alluded to this a couple times, is the desire to merge all of our finances, to keep some separate, some merged, or to have everything completely separate. Now, for Jess and I, we've made the decision to have everything merged. I'm not here to tell you that you should do that or that's the only way, but really having that conversation of what's best for us. Is it all merged? Is it a little bit of both, or is it everything that would be completely separate? Number 5, do we need to check with one another before spending any money? If so, is it a certain amount? What's the criteria for this? How do we determine this? So some, couples might have a large purchase or something that would trigger, hey, we need to have a discussion, about this. So what are those criteria, if any, exist when it comes to making some of those bigger purchases? So that's the first group of questions around setting goals, budgeting, and your overall approach. The second group of questions is around debt management. Debt management. So, question number 6 here on our list of 25 is, how much debt have we acquired thus far? Right? Do we know the numbers? Is everyone aware of the debt that's accrued? And what will be our plan to pay off the debt? Do we both understand each other's debt position and the feelings, perhaps just as important, the feelings towards the debt? Right? For some people, I've talked about this on the show before. For some people, there can be a significant aversion to debt. Others, maybe that's not the case. So if you have two individuals where you have opposite feelings on debt, it's an important conversation to have. Are we treating this as our debt, or is this separate debt, right? When you think about things like credit card debt, student loans, car payments, or other things that especially may have been existing coming into the relationship. Number 7, again, on debt management, how comfortable are we with having debt? And I would encourage you to break this down further to different types of debt, right? Including student loans, credit card, mortgages, car loans, etc. So not just a blanket debt, good or bad, but how do we feel about different types of debt? And then final question on debt, number 8 on our list is, do we view each other's debt as our debt, or is this your debt, right? And how does that potentially approach how we pay that off? All right. Third group of questions is around housing and transportation. So, question 9 on our list is, how do we feel about renting property versus owning a home? Hot topic right now, given where the housing market is at, given where home prices are at, given where interest rates are at. And if we already own a home, are we okay with the current situation, or is there potentially a desire to move? Right. Again, we want to get a lot of these questions and maybe things that we're thinking about, making sure we have an opportunity to discuss with one another. So if we don't own a home already, how do we feel about renting versus owning a home? What's that timeline? And if we already own a home, are we thinking we're set, or is there a potential or a desire to move? Next question around housing transportation, number 10 on our list. If currently renting and there's a goal to own a home, do we agree on the location, on the purchase price, and the amount of down payment that would be needed, right? That's going to have a big impact on the budget. And again, if things are separate and not merge, how are we both contributing to that down payment and getting ready for that purchase? Number 11, as it relates to transportation, do we view our cars as a necessity? Is it a luxury? Will we lease? Are we going to buy our cars? If we buy our cars, are we paying them outright? Are we going to finance part of it? How do we view the transportation part of the plan? And again, let me pause here and reinforce what I was saying towards the beginning. I don't really think there's a right or wrong answer here. The goal is to really get you thinking about, hey, how do we feel individually? How do we feel collectively as a unit? As I think about this question here around transportation, it reminds me of Ramit Sethi's book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich. I've referenced that many times on the show before. And one of the things he talks about, he starts the book, is this concept called money dials. And what he's referring to there is identifying those things that derive the most significance and meaning for you as a part of the financial plan, and have a plan to spend money, what he's referring to as the dial that up. And alternatively, for things that you maybe don't care as much about financially, dial that down, right? And for some people, transportation, cars may be something that's has significant value, and for other people, not so much. All right, next group of questions relates to kids, children. So number 12 on our list is, how do we feel about one of the biggest expenses we often see in the financial plan, daycare? What's our budget for this? And how does it fit in with other financial goals? Number 13, how do we feel about public versus private K through 12 education? Again, this might certainly link back to the home purchase and the location and where you're looking for a home based on schools. And if it is private education is the goal, how will we plan for this and prioritize it with other financial goals? Number 14, again, in this area of children, how do we feel about paying for our kids' college? This is a hot topic, right? You often see maybe people that are split on this. And how do we plan for this? Are we hoping to pay for it in its entirety, a partial amount? Are we banking on, scholarships or other funding, other family to help, taking on debt? What's the plan for that? And then last question as it relates to children, what ideas and strategies do we want to employ to teach our kids about managing money, right? We started this episode talking about the money classroom we grew up in. And for those that have children in the home that you're raising now, they're obviously growing up in their own money classroom in your house. And so what strategies are we employing, and how are we approaching teaching kids about money? what's our philosophy about behind that, right? So this gets to things like, our philosophy around allowances and giving, and how we're going to teach some of those lessons to our kids, and at what ages are they ready for those lessons. All right, next group relates to saving, investing, and retirement planning. So question number 16, when it comes to the emergency fund, are we comfortable with 3 months, right? You hear a general rule of thumb recommendation, 3 to 6 months of essential expenses. So are we comfortable with that 3 months, 6 months, something in between, something different? Have we discussed that? Again, are we on the same page with that? Number 17, what financial goals are we trying to achieve by saving or investing? What does success look like, right? So we often talk about the importance of saving and investing for the future, but for what? What are we trying to achieve, and what does success look like? Number 18, what does retirement look like for both of us? Are there similarities? Are there differences? What's the desired age? Right? What are the activities? What are we working on? Which is the next question. What activities are we engaged in during retirement? What are we doing together? What are we doing separately? Right? Beginning to envision so that we're approaching that retirement phase with intentionality. Next question, how much should we be saving and investing for retirement each month? And how do we balance and prioritize this with other goals? And then final question here on saving, investing, and retirement planning, what is our risk tolerance for investing? And again, if we have two different risk profiles, how are we approaching that as we're saving, investing, and planning for the future? Final set of questions is a group I'm just calling miscellaneous questions. We got 4 left on the list here. Number 22, how does each of us feel about giving? How much, how often, where, how will we plan for this, and what priority? Are there certain things that we have to have achieved before we do this or not? Number 23, do we plan to do the financial plan ourselves, or are we looking to hire a professional to assist? Are we on the same page about this? If the goal is to hire someone, what are the criteria we're going to use that will help us find the right fit? Who's taking the lead in this conversation? What does that look like for us as a unit? When it comes to assisting family financially, whether that be caring for elderly parents, maybe that's supporting a family member in need or some other situation, how do we feel about this, right? How do we feel about this financially and the impact that it can have in other parts of our financial plan? And then finally, question number 25, how will we strike that balance between saving for the future and living a rich life today? What does it mean to us to be living that rich life today? And how are we prioritizing that in the financial plan? So again, that's 25 conversation starters. There's a lot there, right? The different categories we talked about. You can download that list again, yourfinancialpharmacist.com/25. I hope you'll reference that, maybe print it off and have some of those discussions with your partner. Next, I want to give some input, not just from me, but from the YFP community on what has and has not worked for them in their own journey of navigating this topic with their partner. So I recently posted a poll on LinkedIn asking the following question, that for those that are working with a significant other, spouse, or partner on their finances, which of the following best describes your situation? Is everything merged? Are all the finances merged? Are some things merged, some things separate? Or is nothing merged? In essence, everything is separate. And what we saw from that data was just shy of 50%, 49% responded that all of the finances were merged. 42% responded that some were merged and some were separate. And 10% responded that nothing was merged and that everything was separate in their accounts. Now, some of the comments and advice that I thought were helpful to pass on, and again, some different perspectives here. Kelly had this to say, lots of systems can work, but it all starts with transparency. It's not uncommon for one person in the household to do the bill pay and thus see more of the transactions. Periodic money dates can help facilitate conversation. A favorite topic in our house is identifying mutual goals and where we want to prioritize funding for the year. Sometimes our goals are not aligned, and that is an important conversation as well. So Kelly, systems, transparency, having that open conversation, having those periodic money dates, and sometimes those goals aren't aligned, and important conversation to get on the same page. Tracy said that we have a joint household account where we contribute an equal amount each month to cover our household expenses and some minor rainy day savings. We tossed around percentage based on income, but landed on equal flat dollar amount. We also have separate personal spending accounts for ourselves, so we don't feel like we have to justify personal spending to one another. We've divvied up who contributes and covers what to each savings bucket and who does the insurance via their paycheck. All this to say, after typing it, that our marriage is basically a business. I thought that was some humor to add in there as well. Cassidy said, my husband and I follow the 50-30-20 budgeting process right now. We have a joint account where 50% of our income goes towards household expenses and joint purchases, a joint high yield savings where we both contribute 20% of our paycheck for larger goals, and then 30% goes into our fund money, personal checking accounts. So far, it's working great, ensures that we're both contributing an equitable portion of our income. Final one that came in is someone shared, I just got married in summer of 2023. My husband wanted to keep our finances separate except for one joint checking to pay utilities out of. This came from seeing his parents get divorced about 6 years ago and had always fought about money. He did not want that to be us. So going into the marriage, we plan to keep our own savings. I think that's a great example before I go further with this one of how that upbringing, right? How that money classroom can impact how we approach our money today. She goes on to say that we're now 9 months married and we're getting ready to buy a house. With the need to pay the mortgage, we're rethinking finances and will likely be combining more of our money. He prefers a separate checking account for each item, such as utilities and mortgage. We still plan to keep the money we had pre-marriage as our own, stock, savings, mutual funds, etc. We have a joint credit card for joint expenses and groceries. That's worked well. We still have separate credit cards. Being upfront about money has been so important to us. We've had several long conversations about money pre-marriage and within the last few months to get us set up for success. So it sounds like here there's even some transition as they're getting ready to purchase a home. They've been married now just shy of a year, maybe perhaps more that's moving into the joint accounts, but a system that they're still working through. So I appreciate all of those that contributed, providing different ideas. So again, the spirit of this, right, is to identify that system that works best for you, right? Works best for you and your partner. Really accounting where we started with reflecting on and getting curious about what is the money mindset, what's the money personality, the approach that I have, and do I have a good understanding of that for me as well as my partner? Really coming up then with those shared goals, that vision. We talked about what does success look like in the short, mid, and long term, and then beginning to work through those individual areas of the financial plan. Well, certainly last but not least, as many of you know, we have a team of certified financial planners at Your Financial Pharmacist, and we offer fee-only financial planning and tax planning. We work with pharmacists all across the country, and certainly we'd love to have the opportunity to work with you and would love to have an opportunity to talk more to see whether or not those services are a good fit. You can learn more about our fee-only financial planning services, again, at yourfinancialpharmacist.com/learn. Again, that's yourfinancialpharmacist.com/learn. I think, as I mentioned a couple times, that third party, right? That third party can be so helpful to facilitate some of these conversations and to begin to execute on the different aspects of the financial plan. Well, thanks so much for listening and have a great rest of your week. Before we wrap up today's show, I want to again thank this week's sponsor of the Your Financial Pharmacist podcast, First Horizon. We're glad to have found a solution for pharmacists that are unable to save 20% for a down payment on a home. A lot of pharmacists and the YFP community have taken advantage of First Horizon's Pharmacist Home Loan, which requires a 3% down payment for a single-family home or townhome for first-time home buyers and has no PMI on a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage. To learn more about the requirements for First Horizon's Pharmacist Home Loan and to get started with the pre-approval process, you can visit yourfinancialpharmacist.com/home-loan. Again, that's yourfinancialpharmacist.com/home-loan. As we conclude this week's podcast, an important reminder that the content on this show is provided to you for informational purposes only and is not intended to provide and should not be relied on for investment or any other advice. Information in the podcast and corresponding material should not be construed as a solicitation or offer to buy or sell any investment or related financial products. We urge listeners to consult with a financial advisor with respect to any investment. Furthermore, the information contained in our archived newsletters, blog posts, and podcasts is not updated and may not be accurate at the time you listen to it on the podcast. Opinions and analyses expressed herein are solely those of Your Financial Pharmacist unless otherwise noted and constitute judgments as of the dates published. Such information may contain forward-looking statements. which are not intended to be guarantees of future events. Actual results could differ materially from those anticipated in the forward-looking statements. For more information, please visit yourfinancialpharmacist.com/disclaimer. Thank you again for your support of the Your Financial Pharmacist podcast. Have a great rest of your week.